Good afternoon and welcome to another in our series of TalkSports. It's our Saturday Sports special. And I'm Michael Bascom, your host, live from Brooklyn in New York. It's a bit on the mild side, I would say. Very mild indeed. We expect some rain later on into Sunday. But other than that, it's pretty mild for spring-like weather here in New York. Well, on today's program, that's this weekend, we'll be speaking to two sports journalists and looking at sports in the region. But both journalists, sports journalists, one will be in the first hour, the other in the second hour, looking at new initiatives. We'll also be talking about sports in the OECS. Yes, sports in the OECS Sports Desk, regional sports administrators. So have been happening over the last few months, and the pandemic, that's the COVID-19 pandemic, would not have eased up on what has been happening regarding sports in the OECS. But also, we'll be keeping tab on what's taking place in the track and field world in particular, because we have a number of athletes who are competing this weekend. Kirani James opening his season later on in Arizona. He'll be competing in the 400 meters. And then we also have Anderson Peters, who will also be competing today in the javelin event. Then we have some of the college athletes who also will be competing. So lots happening, definitely. And we're hoping to keep tab on all these happenings throughout our program. No doubt, there's also cricket being played in Grenada. That's the Grenada Cricket Association's under 19 tournament at the cricket stadium. And there is also a development meet taking place at the stadium at track and field. That's next door. So a lot's happening, and it's good to see that sports is really, bouncing back to an extent, and no doubt we hope it's the same that's happening that is actually taking place in the various islands. So we'll have an idea of what's happening when we get ready to speak with our sports journalist. And as I said, Colin James will be our first speaker. He'll be our first guest, rather, on the program, and then he'll be followed by Vernon Springer, our good friend Vernon Springer. Colin is actually based in Antigua, and Vernon in St. Kitts, and they will be giving us an update as to what's happening. Well, Colin is the editor of the SportsWorld Antigua. It's a new digital magazine and sports magazine, to be exact, and we'll be hearing all about that initiative, as well as what's happening in Antigua regarding sports. As you recall, Antigua has been a hub for cricket for the past few months in terms of West Indies cricket, and it's also the headquarters for the Cricket West Indies. So quite a bit will be discussing there. And then Vernon comes in the next hour, where we'll be speaking directly about the as you know, Vernon was one of the commentators during the last series with Sri Lanka, and we'll be talking more so about sports in the OECS, the OECS Sports Desk, regional sports administration, because a lot has been happening, and also how the pandemic has affected sports in the OECS. So join us from around 2 o'clock for that segment. But Colin James is the person who will lead us off in the first discussion with the whole initiative of SportsWorld Antigua, and Colin is standing by, and then we'll have Vernon coming on. Just to repeat again that we'll be keeping tab on the developments regarding the cricket at the National Stadium, the cricket stadium in Grenada, the development meet at the Kirani James Athletic Stadium, and then we have our athletes who are competing in various meets, especially in North America. Kirani James opening his season, and then we have Anderson Peters, who competing. Shamar Fletcher is also competing at the Drakes Relay today. That's something I should have mentioned. That's Shamar. And then we want to congratulate Gamali Felix, who no doubt is improving bit by bit. He is aiming for at least a sub 46. He's right around there, 46 low, 46.2. And he is will be one of those that we have to keep tab on. Let me see if now I can go over to Colin James, who is in Buckley's and somewhere in Antigua, I would say. Yeah, it's Buckley's Antigua. Good afternoon to you, Colin.
Hey, good afternoon to you, Mike, and good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. Great to be on your show, as usual. Always a very interesting program, and I was listening forward to hear what some of your viewers and listeners would have to say.
Well, no doubt we'll want to hear what you have to say, more or less, regarding the new initiative, as I indicated in the intro, the SportsWorld Antigua, and all that has been happening in sports in Antigua. So first of all, Colin, tell us more about SportsWorld Antigua, this whole initiative, how you started with this project and how it's going so far.
Well, SportsWorld has been an initiative that I've been thinking about for a number of years now. I would have started off with some specialized publications back in, let's say, around 2012, especially when Antigua and Barbuda were campaigning in the World Cup qualifying for the 2014 World Cup. We had done a couple of publications. We did one as well in 2019 for the England Tour of the Caribbean. So we had looked at the whole scenario with sports being locked down in 2020 and thought about the whole idea of trying to do something now to give our readers a perspective of what has been happening during the pandemic and what can be expected coming out of the pandemic, and also to continue to feature not only sportsmen and women in Antigua and Barbuda, but across the region and internationally as well, because we felt that it was important for our readers to get an idea of what has been happening during the pandemic, and even more so, also give them a perspective of what to look forward to in terms of talent coming out of the Caribbean generally, and also continue to feature our world-class athletes in Antigua, the region, who are looking ahead towards the Olympic Games, the West Indies cricket tours, different events that are taking place around the world, which feature Caribbean athletes and Antigua and Barbuda athletes in particular.
Okay. So thus far, how you will say things have been going, a couple editions already out. What's the feedback like you have been receiving?
Yeah, well, we have so far featured 5 editions, and so what it's all about, it's a digital publication. In other words, it's online, and we have about 5,000 subscribers so far in terms of those who we have sent it to. We have sent it to a number of chat rooms on WhatsApp, and we have also featured it we have sent it out via email and also via our Facebook page, SportsWorld, and also High Stakes Media Group Facebook page. So far, it has been getting a lot of traction across the world. We have a number of connections with not only athletes but sports administrators, people who are involved in sports in a general sense, who have also caught on to the idea of SportsWorld. So we are basically being featured quite extensively across the globe. Maybe in another month or so, we might be in a position that we can print it and begin to sell it on the local market as a first step. And then if possible, we can get it into the regional markets and international markets as well. Because one of the first things some of our advertisers had asked us is if the magazine is for sale. And when we indicated to them it's going to be an online digital publication, they were of the view that to maximize on their advertising dollars, they would love to see it being sold locally as well, meaning solo in Antigua and Barbuda. So those who are shopping at the various business places, the supermarkets, the pharmacies, the bookstores and the different outlets that sell magazines and newspapers and so on, those customers too will have a chance to pick up a copy. So we're working on getting that part of the bargain organized in terms of getting it printed, and maybe in a month or so we'll be able to consolidate that initiative.
Mm-hmm. And fully colored, I should say, right? Colored.
Yes. Well, everything these days is in color, so we can't come, anything shorter than that. And the fact too that if not all, most of our photos are in color, it means that we have to follow suit. As we continue to dig maybe into our archives, we might get one or two black and white photos, but I doubt that is going to be possible at this time. But be that as it may, we'll continue to work with color photos. There might be a few black and white photos in our archives because, as you would know, Mike, I've been involved in media, journalism, sports reporting for the better part of 35 years, since about 82, 83. Working professionally since about 1984 in sports. So there are a number of photos and articles that I would have saved over the period of time. So we might be going back down memory lane to feature some of those exciting or some of those memorable stories and photos that would have captivated the sporting fraternity over the last 30, 35, 40 years or so.
Mm-hmm. You're one of those who may not have been affected by any of the natural disasters. I know a lot of people would have lost photos and other things from hurricanes and what have you, but it appears that you're not really affected.
Well, in a sense, you can say that since about 1985, Antigua and Barbuda, like some of the Caribbean islands, have been experiencing quite a few hurricanes. Maybe the good thing for me is that I have not been affected too much by any hurricane since 1995 in terms of structural damage or internal damage at my property. And I can remember back in my days at the Antigua Sun newspaper, back between 1997, 98, 99, I think up to 2001, I was able to archive a number of photographs or keep them in a very safe place since during that period. And over the number of years since the mid-1980s going forward too, I would have been able to save quite a bit of number of newspaper clippings. I don't know if you remember the days of the EC News newspaper, where myself and Hamlet Mark were quite prominent in terms of writing a weekly column for the EC News newspaper. Also, too, I would have done a number of writings for the Nation newspaper, the Jamaica Observer, also the Trinidad Express, and other regional newspapers. And then, going to cover a number of international events like I think I covered 2 or 3 Olympic Games, Pan American Games, Commonwealth Games since 2002. You'd have built up quite an archive of information and photos and so on, memorabilia that you'd want to feature from time to time in the SportsWorld newspaper, SportsWorld magazine, as some people call it.
Yeah, very much recall EC News. Those were the days when you would probably say that we had active sports journalists, Colin.
Well, it was the OECS Sports Desk. The OECS Sports Desk was very big in terms of having activities. Rex Pereira, the organizer of the OECS Sports Desk, he made sure there were a number of activities taking place across the sub-region in terms of OECS sports. Just about everything. From cricket, netball, basketball, football, track and field, bodybuilding, you name it. The OECS Sports Desk was there. So almost on a weekly basis, you had something happening in a Caribbean island, and with the sports desk at the OECS Secretariat organizing good deals with Leah, the Caribbean airline, as it was then. 50% travel at the time for sporting teams to move across the sub-region, sometimes including Barbados. It was a really great time for sports in the OECS from, let's say, the mid-1980s right through until about maybe 2000 or so. If if I'm being generous with that time period. But it was really a great time for sports in the sub-region. And then you had the other national associations, regional associations with their different sporting events. You like the games. You had the Caribbean Football Union Championship. You had the regional cricket tournaments, whether it be the Red Stripe Cup, the Red Stripe Bowl, the 4-day tournament, the 1-day tournaments, the touring teams coming to the Caribbean for cricket. And, just a plethora of sports taking place around the sub-region. And that would have been, a great thing for not only the sub-region, but the Caribbean as a whole.
Yeah. Colin, just one thing, if you can just, I think we're not seeing much of you, right? Yeah, I think you need to be a little up so we can see the face. I think somehow you hide the background. Yeah, probably too much of the headroom, but we need to see. Yeah, but it's an important point you're making there, and I think you are basically driving home the point for something like SportsWorld Antigua. Its relevance, I should say, for SportsWorld Antigua, because in the final analysis, and what is important is also documenting, documenting so that later on, it's available, because I am certain that you spoke about the EC News, for example, and there might be folks who wonder what it is you're talking about. Is there something that's there that can make reference to EC News, except yourself and Hamlet and others just talking about it? And the internet, as it is now, is giving life to all that you're speaking about, because we know that 10 years from now, at least, there will be some archive of SportsWorld Antigua.
Yes. Well, what I can say about EC News in that respect, we'd have to ask the powers that be at the Nation newspaper in Barbados to really give us an opportunity to go through their archives, because they were the parent body or the parent company that was in charge of the EC News. Basically, the EC News was a sub-desk of the Nation newspaper. Charles Hardin, he was the editor, so he operated from Barbados in terms of the whole management of the editorial content that went into the EC News. So in terms of archive material, they would have, if not all, most of the issues that came out in terms of the EC News. What I could endeavor to do for you, Mike, is that maybe sometime in the near future, in another week or so, I could maybe go to my archives and maybe give you a few copies of some of the issues or some of the clippings of the EC News, so you can share with your audience. But certainly, if we were going to do any justice to the EC News, basically we'd have to tap into the resources of the Nation newspaper in Barbados to get a look-see of some of the editions of the EC News. And it also forged a sort of regional integration, because not only it featured sports, it was very heavy in terms of the news coming out of the OECS countries. And every OECS country was featured on a weekly basis. There was a correspondent in all OECS countries. I only mentioned the fact that myself and Hamlet had written weekly opinion columns, because of the fact that at that time it was Grenada and Antigua and Barbuda were seen as the two main avenues or main center for sports in the sub-region. I know Grenada at that time was very big on track and field, as you still are, and Antigua for cricket and football and even netball. Grenada with netball and as well. St. Lucia would have been for volleyball and to some extent football as well, and the different islands. So, the EC News really covered, as the name suggested, the Eastern Caribbean.
Well, and it's a nice segue to our conversation, but let me just say good afternoon to Kathy Harper-Hall. The good old days, as she says, the good old days of Caribbean sports, and as she said, this is Kathy Harper-Hall reminiscence with you, obviously.
Yeah, and I know Kathy had a good relationship with Reds. The number of times they would come to Antigua to do different workshops, not only in netball, because we all know Kathy has been and is still very instrumental in netball in the Caribbean. But she was also very instrumental in boxing, surprisingly, and that was a sport in the OECS that was very prominent during the time of the EC News, because we had a very thriving boxing program in Antigua. I can remember the days of the Woodbury Park gym. Warren Woodbury, an American who came to Antigua and really had a dynamic program, and that filtered down into the Caribbean, into the other OECS countries, that including Barbados as well. Grenada had a very good boxing program, as I remembered it, and the other OECS countries were big in boxing. And you know, if we were able to cast our memories back a bit, we would know that the Cubans had an influence as well in terms of the development of boxing in certain Caribbean, in certain OECS countries. I think Grenada, I can say Grenada benefited a lot from the Cuban influence in terms of boxing. And as Cathy said, yes, she's still involved in netball and boxing. So, you know, we really had a very thriving program there. And I think that, you know, maybe in another, let's give ourselves another 5 years, if the various ministers of sports in the OECS, we can overcome whatever challenges we're going through now, whether it be the COVID-19 pandemic or the volcano in St. Vincent or any hurricane that would have that we might experience between June and November. If we can overcome those challenges and regional airlift resumes in a significant way, I can see a rebirth of interregional sports, because that is very important. And don't forget to, Mike, that we also had the Windward Islands and Leeward Islands football championships, and then the winners of both competitions would meet for the OECS championship. I can remember coming to Grenada in 1998, I believe, when Antigua won the Leeward Islands leg to play against Grenada. I think that game was played at Tantine. And then Grenada came to Antigua a week later to play the return leg at the police recreation ground. So we're not even talking about matches being played at the main sport venues as we know them now, whether it be the Antigua recreation ground in Antigua or the Cerritos Stadium, which came on the scene in 2007, or the Grenada National Stadium, which came on the scene in 2007 for the Cricket World Cup. You know, there were other venues that were being used while sports was progressing and developing in other shape and form.
You're saying let's give us probably another 5 or so years, but there are those who might be saying we probably had 10, 15 years, and if we wait for another 5 years, we will get left. But before we go on to that point, let me just bring up for those. This, I think, is the latest issue, right?
Yeah, that's the latest issue that came out on Wednesday. We're in the process of putting together the next issue, which comes out tomorrow morning. Basically, so what we had featured there in this latest issue, which was issue number 5, we're featuring. Well, we started by featuring at least one Antiguan young cricketer, Youri Smith, who is heading up to England to play in the Middlesex League. And this is a joint initiative between the Antigua and Barbuda High Commission in London and the Ministry of Sports. Youri is just one of about 5 to 6 young Antiguan cricketers who will be going off to England. I think 4 of them are leaving tomorrow, and another 2 might be leaving during the upcoming week. Also, you would have noticed on the front cover, we had a story with a UK boxing coach. Now, he was born in England, but his family is from Antigua. So his mother and father grew up in Antigua, migrated to England, and he's now looking to come back home to see how much he can assist the boxing program in Antigua. He's part of a gym in Slouch, and he wants to come back home to see how much he can help develop boxing. So we're just trying to see how much we can give our readers an insight into what is happening during the pandemic, and we also want them to be part of what they would have missed, because the Sri Lanka tour in Antigua for a month, there were absolutely no spectators allowed either at the Coolidge Cricket Ground or the Cerritos Stadium for those matches. So we had 3 T20 internationals, 3 one-day internationals, and 2 test matches, and we featured all those matches, all 8 matches in the first 3-4 issues of SportsWorld. And we also are going to look back at the Super 50, which featured 26 matches between February and March of this year, where Trinidad and Tobago emerged undisputed champions. And also too, between December and March of this year, cricket was reopened in Antigua and Barbuda when the Antigua Barbuda Cricket Association staged a T10, a T10 splash. That's a 10 overs a side competition in December. And then in January, from mid-January until about early March, they had the Super 50, the ABC Super 40, a limited overs competition, 40 overs competition. And for about 6 weeks, the entire country was galvanized in supporting local cricket matches for the first time in about 3 or 4 decades, like has never been before. And it so happened that the final, which was played on a Sunday afternoon up in Bethesda, which is on the eastern side of the country, we had over 5,000 spectators at that venue. And the game was won off the very last ball of the match, where Anthony Martin, former West Indies and Leeward Islands batsman, playing for Bethesda along with Gavin Tongue, the last two, well, not the partnership that won it for Bethesda, the winning partnership. They were the crease, and Anthony Martin got the winning run of the very last ball of the game. And naturally, you're playing on your home ground in terms of Bethesda. You win by 1 run, by I think 3 wickets off the last ball of the game. So there was an explosion of spectators going onto the field to support, to celebrate the victory. And that caused a little bit of concern for the health authorities. So since about late March, early April, cricket has gone back down into lockdown in Antigua, as most sports would have been. Except for cycling, I don't think we're playing any competitive sports in Antigua. So it is hoped that the lockdown would be relaxed soon, and cricket can resume, because coming out of that T10 and the Super 40 tournament organized by the Antigua and Barbuda Cricket Association, a number of young talent came to the fore. I can talk to you about an all-rounder called Easton, one opening batsman, left-handed opening batsman with Guyanese heritage. I think his mother is Guyanese, father Antiguan, left-handed batsman and right-arm off-spinner. He's one for the future. We spoke about Yuri Smith. There's also a young man who resembles Sylvester Joseph, very much in mannerism and in batting style. Hilroy Andrew, his younger brother Joel Andrew, Leeward Islands on the 13th captain. They have been among the runs. The Empire team featuring the likes of Marley Richards, the son of the great Sir Vivian Richards, and also Tyrone Williams Jr., Leeward Islands selectee. So, we were really seeing a rebirth of cricket, not only in terms of talent coming to the fore, but also, spectators going out to support their respective teams. So just on a Saturday and a Sunday for about a 6-week period, almost every cricket venue that matches are played in Antigua, the fans were going out in their droves to watch local cricket matches, and that really brought a good feeling to sports in Antigua.
Mm-hmm. And even though, and all of that happening in the midst of the pandemic, which
yes,
and which you believe is a good sign, because once the pandemic hopefully is over, well, let's say so, you believe that things will be on stream in terms of sports and sports development in Antigua.
Yes, as I said, a lot of the associations, national associations in Antigua and Barbuda, would have been putting programs and plans in place to mitigate against the COVID-19 pandemic. The Antigua and Barbuda Football Association, which has the benefit of the biggest spectator supporting association in terms of sports in Antigua, they have not been able to restart the national program. That ended up abruptly in March of 2020, I think the first week of March 2020, when the entire country went into a lockdown. And since then, football on a competitive level has not been played in Antigua and Barbuda. But that has not stopped the ABFA from basically mounting different programs, whether it be coaching programs for its coaches. And just recently, I think it wrapped up on Wednesday evening, the ABFA completed the second of 2 team managers workshop, which were conducted by Patrick Beckles from Barbados. And I think in the last one, over 50 people took part in that. And then in the first one, there were another, 30 or so participants. And then the CONCACAF B license course, which was conducted by Anton Cornell, the son of Alvin Cornell, that involved, I think, 11 to 15 participants. But there could have been more, but you'd have to pass your D and C license to take part in the CONCACAF B license course. The national football team, as you know, would have participated in two Qatar 2022 World Cup qualifying matches. Antigua and Barbuda joined with Montserrat. As you know, the Montserrat team would have been primarily players of Montserrat heritage living in Britain. And ironically, the Montserrat team was being coached by Willie Donachie, who was a technical director in Antigua back in the mid-2000, somewhere between 2008, 2012, I think. And the Antigua Barbuda team, they had two coaches, the head coach, Tom Curtis, and his assistant, Michael Leisurewood. They're based in England, so they came down to see the first match, or supervise the first match against Montserrat, which was played in Curacao because the Antigua Barbuda Football Association could not host the game in Antigua because of COVID issues. But unfortunately for the Antigua Barbuda team, when they were going out to St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands to play the U.S. Virgin Islands, the English-based players, there were about 4 players and the 2 coaches, 6 of them could not leave from Curacao to go into the U.S. Virgin Islands via Puerto Rico because the U.S. government had placed a ban on UK travelers. So the ABFA would have been able to overcome those challenges and pull off a 3-0 victory against U.S. Virgin Islands in St. Croix in the World Cup qualifying matches. But I think generally, Antiguan and Barbudans are looking forward to the reopening of sports in the country. As I said, cycling is taking place on a competitive level. They have a meet this weekend. And Sailing Week, which is, you don't really consider Sailing Week a out-and-out sport, but you know that it brings a lot of economic and sporting value to Antigua and Barbuda, which would have been taking place around this time, has now gone into a virtual event. So there was no Sailing Week events in 2020. There are no events this year, but what the organizers have done, they have organized a virtual event, and I think a limited number of boats will be taking part in a virtual event. They're going to be sailing on the southwestern side of the country. I think from Nelson's Dockyard in English Harbour down to Old Road, down to Carlisle Bay in Old Road, and that is going to be a virtual event. So you can follow that event on Facebook in terms of Sailing Week. Track and field, it has received a new lease on life because the Yasco track, which is located just a stone throw away from the Antigua Recreation Grounds, has been resurfaced. That took about 3.5 to 4 years to be completed because of varying issues, but the track has been completely resurfaced. It was done. It was finished in March of this year. Could have been finished by March of last year, but when the lockdown came worldwide, the technicians from Mondo, the people who make the track, those technicians opted to go back home, and they were only able to come back into Antigua in early January, late January, early February. So the entire track at Yasco has been resurfaced, and it's going to be certified for regional international events. So pretty soon, Mike, just as you have the national stadium in Grenada for track and field, I think by July, August, we might have a regional championship for track and field in Antigua. So we might see the Okirani, James, and others coming to Antigua to compete before Tokyo 2020 in 2021.
Interesting enough, but it's good to hear that the track, because I know the president of the Antigua and Barbuda Athletics Association has been talking a lot about having that track, and how it has affected even the preparation of athletes, over the years, especially the international athletes, and athletes preparing for regional championships, including the Carifta Games, So it's good to know that Antigua is the track is back up, and athletes can look forward to competitive meets, because there was once, Colin, you should know that Antigua and Barbuda when they had the OECS track and field championships, it used to be also the Texaco games, I think, in Barbados, and Antigua used to have the represented, especially in the long distance events. In the long distance, and there was once Antigua had one of the fastest sprinters in the OECS. All these things. So I'm certain that when it comes to athletics, track and field, Antigua wants to make sure that it's also in the limelight, not just cricket, but track and field. And it's good also to hear that the yachting is back up. We know that there's the annual across the Atlantic racing.
From La Gomera in Spain to
right.
That took place. That took place between December and March of this year. And Antigua had, for the first time, Antigua featured appears. 2 young men from Antigua took part in that, and I think they came first or second in their category. And they did exceptionally well, because for the first time, it was a 2-member team or two-man team, and they were able to come across the Atlantic. Previously, we had first we had the Team Antigua. They were a group of elder citizens or elder statesmen, Dr. Fuller and his team. All of them were featured were over the age of 60, I think. So there was that 4. Then you had Team Antigua, which was a team featuring another 4 rowers. Eli Fuller, who is the cousin or nephew of Dr. Fuller. They did well as well. And then you had the all-female team of Team Island Girls, 4 young ladies from Antigua and Barbuda. And then you had this recent one, this team in 2021, 2 young men who came across the Atlantic. So, although we are in a pandemic, and the social distancing and the different protocols, sports still has been resonating quite well in Antigua and Barbuda and some Caribbean islands as well. I must say too that from the point of view of track and field, CJ Green, who is based overseas, I think he's in Miami, and he trains with MVP International, that famed Jamaican team of athletes or camp. And he has so far clocked 10.01 to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. Recently, he ran another race, and I think 10 flat. That race was won by the name of the American sprinter who was banned a few times is just escaping me. Justin Gatlin. Yeah, he was part of that race too. So along with Priscilla Frederick, our female jumper, she's gearing up for Tokyo. She hasn't qualified as yet. And then there's a young lady by the name of Joelle Lloyd. She was dominant at regional junior meets, and also in 2019 she won a silver medal, a silver and a bronze medal at Carifta Games. She's on the college circuit now. She's doing quite well. She's based, I think, in Kentucky. And since the track would have been resurfaced at Yasco, it has been a hive of activity as the young athletes go through their training regimes. And not that they were waiting for Yasco to be completed to be training, because they were using the Antigua Recreation Ground, which is going to go through a major facelift within the next few years. A committee has been formed to look into the whole redevelopment of the Antigua Recreation Ground, but it's going to take quite a bit. I would want to believe that he will take upwards of maybe 20 million or more to really bring the ARG or restore it to what you'd want to see as a modern facility. But that's a discussion for another program, Mike. But the point I'm making is that our athletes were using different venues. Like one of our top coaches, Evans Jawaki Jones, who is the assistant director of sports, he was using the Markpan playing field in All Saints to do his training. And his daughter, Sanaya Jones, who I think is the reigning junior sportswoman of the year, she's also attending college in the US, and from all reports, she has been doing well to date. Also, Heather Samuel, the director of sports, she has her own track and field club as well. They were using, I think, Cedar Valley and the New Wintraps playing field to train. The Wing Sports Club, they were using, I think, the Christ High School grounds to do their training. And other clubs were using other venues to do the training. I must mention, too, that there's a young man who left Antigua back in January, I want to believe, to go to Jamaica to train with that club that Usain Bolt came out of, Racers, if that's the name.
Racers.
Yes. So our athletes and our officials would have found ways and means to keep themselves active and also find avenues and opportunities to compete competitively, because they know they can be idle. And I know that there are a number of footballers who are looking to see if they can get college scholarships or continue to get college scholarships to go overseas. And that also, as I indicated, with our cricketers, most of them are looking to go off to England. And as you know, Alzari Joseph, as well as a few of the West Indies players, Alzari's at Worcestershire. The captain, Craig Bradford, he's with Gloucestershire. I think Kemar Roach is with Hampshire. And, a few West Indies players are in the IPL. But I'm just saying that, some of our cricketers are taking the lead that Alzari Joseph would have taken to go to England, so they can get, better cricket and also being exposed to a different kind of competition. A name I should mention who has also been instrumental in getting players to England is Robert Joseph. You may not know of him from the point of view that he was one of our marquee former players, but Robert Joseph went to England in the early 2000s as part of an Antiguan team, I believe, and he was picked up by Kent. And he did so well that England had approached him to play for them. I think he made the England B team, or the England Lions, as they call themselves. And he was on the verge of making the England senior team. But I think he got injured and then didn't recover sufficiently in time to regain his form. But he has been in Antigua for the last 8 months doing some coaching. And I've been in touch with him over the last week or so. And he's going to be taking one of our young upcoming cricketers to England with him as part of a coaching and mentorship experience. In other words, Robert Joseph is going back to England to coach at the league level, and he's taking a young Antiguan cricketer by the name of Kadeem Henry, who came out of the Leeward Islands Youth Tournament with a lot of runs, and I think a double century as well. And Kadeem is going with Robert up to England, and Robert is going to be coaching, but Kadeem is going as part of a mentorship program that Robert was able to organize for him. So a number of opportunities are there for our sportsmen and sportswomen in Antigua and Barbuda, and I just think it's a matter of time before we see sports reopen in Antigua from a competitive point of view, and we can have that inter-village, inter-country, or inter-club competitions going, or club competitions going in Antigua, and more of our sportsmen and women will be competing. We're looking to hear what netball has to offer as well, because they too had organized some coaching programs which were done via Zoom online. And I know Karen Joseph, which is a name that is very popular in the OECS and the Caribbean, one of the top 5 netball shooters ever to have graced the Caribbean stage. Karen is the president of the Netball Association here, and she too has been instrumental in getting programs. And also swimming, although there has not been any competitive swimming in Antigua, those who are in colleges from Antigua and Barbuda have been doing well. A number of them would have bettered their personal best times, and they're just looking forward to coming back home to take part in the national championships and getting ready, I think, for Curfew Games. Curfew is track and field and swimming, and they're working out the logistics of having Curfew in August of this year. I think the track part of it will be in Curacao, Mike?
You mean the
Curfew Games.
Your track and field you're talking about?
Yeah, in Bermuda.
Bermuda.
Yeah, Bermuda, yeah. I don't know where the swimming is going to take place, but I think it might be in Trinidad for Curfew Games swimming. So we have a lot to look forward to, Mike. I guess just like I would have done, you might have to take up your pen and paper again.
Nah, not really. Fully retired. But one of the articles you carried this week has to do with the Super League. That has been hot news over the past week or so, and we have heard various views from folks. despite the reporting and what you have reported, what's your personal view on the Super League?
Well, first of all, I couldn't see how the major clubs in Europe could be thinking about a Super League. I just couldn't understand where that came from. And if I were to use an American jargon, where in left field that came from, or where from left field that came from. And I just had to, look at it from the point of view that it was a matter of the American owners pushing an agenda. There are quite a few American owners who are owning some of the big clubs. Let me say American investors who are owning big clubs in Europe. You know that Liverpool, my club, is owned by the Fenway Sports Group that comes out of the Boston Red Sox organization. The Manchester United, the Glazer family, another American family. Also, you would have Stan Kroenke, who I think is an American owner of Arsenal. Although Abramovich is Russian, he owns Chelsea. And you look around and you see that influence. The clubs in Spain have been struggling badly because of the COVID pandemic in terms of finances. Florentino Perez from Real Madrid and Juan Laporte of Barcelona, they're struggling as well. Some of the Italian clubs are struggling. But I'm just wondering if it wasn't the American influence which would have caused these clubs to look at a Super League. And when I read recently, I think a day or two ago, that JP Morgan, that big American bank, was bankrolling the Super League to the tune of $3 billion US dollars. You can understand the magnitude of the investment that would have gone into the Super League. And although you could sympathize with the clubs for wanting to get some revenue, to recover some lost revenue from the pandemic, I mean, to go and have a completely new breakaway competition where the whole question of relegation and promotion would have been null and void and would have been part of that, really goes against the spirit of what we know sports would be. And coming out of the Caribbean, or looking at it from a Caribbean point of view, where we were basically, we grew up on the British tradition of how sports was being administered, promotion, relegation, different divisions. When you look at the American system, you look at the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, even Major League Soccer, there is no promotion or relegation in those with those franchise organizations. And it comes down to expansion whenever they feel, this is necessary for expansion. And if the British clubs, especially the Chelseas, the Manchester United, the Liverpools, the Arsenal, the Tottenham, were to go down that route, they would be isolating their fans. And it was the revolt of the fans which really caused that backlash against the whole question of a Super League. And as I said in my editorial in the latest issue, to me, it was akin to the West Indies players who opted to go to South Africa in the early 1980s to earn a livelihood on the backs of the sweat and blood of our brothers and sisters in South Africa who were fighting for their freedom. And I just looked at it, from that context. And, I just wondered why they would have come up with such an initiative at this stage, when the Champions League, to me, is the box seller, the box office that you'd want in football.
Well, on a personal note, while I understand, the intricacies and all of that, my issue, and I have to agree with what Shaka Hislop said, my issue was how quick FIFA and UEFA and others were able to respond and react. Yet, when issues as racism and equality and all these issues are on the fore, they remain silent. They remain numb. But because there was something that was aiming directly at their pockets, aiming directly at their power base, within hours, they were able to react. And, probably because of the players and fans' support for, opposition rather to the Super League. I believe that's why it may have flopped. But I don't think UEFA and FIFA would have been able to go alone. They needed the support of fans and players in this regard, because it was glaring that when issues of racism and others, that they do not come out and speak out, and statements and all these sort of things, and because it's something that was going directly at their power base, I think they came out. That's my personal view, and I have to agree with that.
I share that view, Mike. Yeah, I think you have raised a very important topic there. That I still believe that the football authorities have not done enough to quell racism across the globe, not only in Europe, but across the globe generally. And I still believe that more can be done. As I was indicating, coming out of that the workshop for team managers organized by the ABFA, I was part of that, and there was a topic which dealt with the whole question of racism in football. And there's a protocol which says that for the first if there's an incident of racism, that the referee stop the game for 5-10 minutes or so. An announcement is made over the loudspeaker system. If it continues, the match is halted for at least half an hour, with the proviso that if it continues, the game will be called off, and if there's a third time, it's called off. I think that it should be one incident of racism, the game is called off. You don't need 2 and 3 to really stop the game. You don't need 2 or 3 incidents to stop the game. And if the authorities are firm, like if a player commits a red card offense that he's given a straight red, we have to give racism a straight red card whenever the first incident occurs. And I support any player or team who walks off the field when they racist chants in the stands. And that game between PSG and I think a team from either Ukraine or Russia, where I think it was Demba Ba, who was very annoyed by the behavior, I think, of the PSG bench in an incident. And I supported that stand taken by Demba Ba and the rest of his teammates or the team to walk off. It's only when these things happen, Mike, when they take these drastic action against racism, that we're going to see an end to racism. So I need to see UEFA, I need to see FIFA, and I really being more proactive and being more bold to stamp out racism. It's not just about putting it on the TV screen or taking the knee before game or putting it on the sleeves of the players when they go to play. There must be some firm action demonstrated by UEFA and FIFA to stamp out racism.
Well, that is indeed that's our hope, but it's good, Colin, that look, our hour is just getting wrapping up, but I still want us to speak a little about I know we'll go when Vernon comes in the next hour, Vernon will speak about that, but from your point of view regarding sports in the OECS in particular, I know you spoke quite a lot about in Antigua and what's happening in Antigua, but overall in the OECS, and one who has covered sports within the OECS as well, what's your hope that for sports in the OECS in going forward? We know that we don't have the OECS Sports Desk, for example, anymore, and we don't have someone like the Red Pereira who used to move throughout the OECS to ensure that not just volleyball, not just football, not just table tennis, but even sports as squash, and others are played and are competitive enough indeed. But what's your hope of sports in the OECS probably in the next? I know you like to use the 5-year. the 5-year
I just want
plan.
to make sure I give the powers that be enough time. I don't want to put them into a tightrope situation where I give them at least maybe 2 years. But quite frankly, first, I think if the OECS heads of governments would have would establish an initiative, maybe at their next summit, mandate that the ministers of sports meet, whether virtually or in person, mandate the ministers of sports to reconvene sports at the sub-regional level, reconstitute the OECS Sports Desk with a director, a staffing, and move it from there. And what they can also do in every Ministry of Sports in the OECS countries, have a sub-desk, an OECS Sports sub-desk, maybe a 2 or 3 member staff, looking at how they can get the national association in their respective countries now to recognize the fact that we need to have OECS sports back. And if the heads set that initiative in motion and the ministers of sports follow through, and the various ministries of sports set up a desk to look at sports redevelopment or the redevelopment of sports in the OECS, then I see it can happen. And something like that should take, 6 to 12 months to put in place from a policy and administrative point of view. And then I expect from an operational and execution point of view that we should have sports at the sub-regional level sometime between late 2003, early 2004, but certainly not later than 2025. When I say 2023, late 2022 to 2023, and certainly by 2024, we should have some level of competition. If it can happen sooner, the more the better.
And you're saying that in the context of most of the islands in the OECS now have, facilities, international standard sporting facilities. Whether it's Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent,
right. There's a great sporting complex. I took my young Warriors footballers to Montserrat in 2017. And the youngsters who were between, let's say, ages 11 to 16, they were amazed to see the level of the facilities in Montserrat. The training facilities were excellent. The playing facilities were excellent. The dressing room, the stands, great. And since 2007, there has been the development of a number of sporting facilities in the OECS region. We talk about the Cerritos Stadium in Antigua. You talk about Dominica's sports stadium being developed, although it was affected by the hurricane I think in 2017, 2018. I think it has been renovated. You talk about, Grenada as well, St. Lucia with the Darren Sammy sports stadium and other facilities there. So there are a number of relatively new or facilities that would have been developed since OECS Sports would have taken a backseat sometime around the mid to late 2000 or so. So the facilities are there, and it's just now to have active competition. You spoke about squash. There is a squash facility in English Harbour in Antigua that has not been used for a number of years because there's just no local squash program.
Well, I could tell you there's a squash facility adjacent to the Grenada the Kirani James Athletic Stadium that was actually built. But as you said, there's no squash played in Grenada as well.
So we really need to revive sports at the sub-regional level, at the OECS level, because it's not everybody is going to represent their respective national teams at the Olympic or the World Cup qualifying level. But if they can make their national team to play in an OECS event. And one of the big things about OECS sports, which we didn't even touch on, was the whole question of club sports. There are a lot of club competitions. So the player who was just good enough to play for his club could have gone to represent his club overseas in an OECS event, and that also helped to foster the development of other athletes in the various clubs.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much, Colin. It has been a pleasure, chatting with you. Hope we can do it all over again some other time in the future. I want to wish you all the best with SportsWorld. As you said, the next edition will be out when?
Sunday, tomorrow. We're
On
actually
Sunday.
working into as we speak, and we're aiming to have it out by midnight tonight, or by 6 o'clock Sunday morning.
Okay.
And and as I've encouraged persons to do, if you want to get a copy, just email me at high stakes media groups groups with an S at Gmail, or SportsWorld Antigua at gmail.com.
Okay, right. Okay, then. Thank you very much, Colin.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation, and I look forward to hearing Vernon's dissertation.
Yeah, okay then. Thank you very much. Okay then, right. So, folks, that's Colin James live from Buckley's in Antigua, and no doubt giving us an update as what's happening, all about SportsWorld Antigua. And as you saw, that it's very colorful and updated indeed. I've received my copies, and as he indicated, I will try to post the email addresses, as he mentioned, that you can make a request if you want to be added to the subscription list. It's very informative. This is one thing I can tell you, and I want to thank Colin for being part of our program. Well, as indicated, the man of the moment for the next hour is standing by, and no doubt our good friend over in St. Kitts and Nevis. Let's welcome Vernon Springer, the great Vernon Springer, who is joining us live from somewhere in St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, he will tell us exactly where he is. I know, the last time we spoke, he was in Antigua. Good afternoon to you, Vernon.
Good afternoon to you, Senator Michael Bascom. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Vernon, as you know, Vernon has been on our program a couple of times, giving us, this take on, well, more so on cricket, because when he came on, it was during the series. But this time we'll be talking not just cricket, but we'll be talking about OECS sports. We'll be talking about regional sports administration, all as it relates to sports in the OECS. And I assume that Vernon will want to pick up from where Colin has left off, I should say, regarding sports in the OECS. So first off, how are things going with you, Vernon?
Well, you give God thanks, and it is a wonderful time to be alive, as you would say, and being in Antigua and Barbuda. I just had a chance this morning to walk around where I live, so that's a real privilege. Some folks don't have that luxury and that opportunity to be able to walk around, so you give God thanks. And at the same time, went into town and saw some folks getting vaccinated. So that was pretty much impressive. I've got my job already, so I'm just waiting to get my second job to make sure that, hopefully I can maybe tour around the world, because that's the way we're going right now.
Okay, that's good to hear. Yes, so we have quite a lot to get off with for this hour regarding sports in the OECS in particular. And it's a nice segue, because when Colin left us, that's Colin James, was actually speaking about the hope of the OECS Sports Desk. And that's something I know that's dear to you regarding sports in the OECS, and hopefully the re-establishing of the OECS Sports Desk. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, let me take some time out to salute the pioneers who continue to work hard behind the scenes in sports in the OECS. And I really want to, through your program this afternoon, to really single out my friend, Trevor Shillingford, the Director of Sports in Dominica, in the Commonwealth of Dominica, who I feel has been leading. And when you look around and you can see, he's making a statement. Now, despite this COVID-19 pandemic, and all of our technocrats who are advising our sports ministers around the Caribbean and around the OECS that, we shouldn't be playing sports, Dominica has gone out on a limb and has made a huge impact and a benefit to the young people in Dominica. And so you could see through the Ministry of Sports Division in Dominica that activities are happening community-wise. And I really want to take some time out to salute Trevor Shillingford, because I think that speaks volumes in terms of his own development. Now, Trevor is somebody that I would have met like a long time ago, Michael. I think we first started at the under 15 level, Cricket West Indies under 15 level. That's when I first got connected with Trevor Shillingford, and was very instrumental at the time when I was working in the government of St. Kitts and Nevis Ministry of Sports Department for the 13 and under program. And so we had an establishment of youth sports between Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, who at that point in time, first we started with Pat White, then we went on to Mervyn Richards. Just to let you know, Michael, that Lloyd Lazar, who was my director of sports at the time, I went on to become PS, he passed away last year. So you would understand in terms of what's happening. Then we had Erskine King in Barbados. And then you had Cardigan Connor in Anguilla. And then you had Fitzroy Buffon and those guys in Montserrat. And so you had a cadre of sports leaders who understand youth sports development. Now, what you have today is that the technocrats who are directors of sports in these respective ministries are only concerned about their sport, whether we like it or not. If they're into cricket, that's what they're concerned about. If they're into track and field, they're into basketball, that is all they're concerned about, not the overall development of youth sports. So, because there's nobody nudging the directors of sports and they're coming together with a comprehensive program, that is why I feel, Michael, that the OECS Sports Desk has just gone off the boil. Because while the OECS sports ministers maybe meet, there's really been no articulation of, let's say, an idea from Colin James to be able to push on the table and say, hey, what are we doing about OECS sports? Simply because, and I keep saying it all the time and a lot of folks don't like to hear it, the administrators in our Ministry of Education and in our respective countries around feel that sports are for dummies. And so when you go to them with an idea about sports, first thing they're asking you, Michael, what sports you're talking about? But they don't understand the value of what sports means to a country. So maybe you need to be able to give them a crash course and a lesson on Karani James winning an Olympic medal. I can give them an analysis of Kim Collins being a Commonwealth champion to a world champion, to El Comida Willett, who was the first player from the Leeward Islands to open the door for Test cricket. So you have now the folks of Sir Vivian Richards, Andy Roberts and company. I could give them an analysis on that. I could also tell them that the small little country of St. Kitts and Nevis combined has been able to host CPL, starting from way back from 2018, 2019, being able to get its own team, the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots, and will now host the CPL 2021. So you could begin to tell them the benefits of those situations. But until such time, Michael, when we have a fight on our hand to be able to convince our educators and the people who sit around the importance of sports, we always are going to be behind the 8 ball. So you know what happens during a pandemic, Michael? The first budget that is going to get cut is the Ministry of Sports budget. Not improving up. Notice what I said. The first budget, when they go into the analysis, first budget that is going to get cut is the Ministry of Sports budget. And somebody's going to tell you, boy, we got to take the money from there to be able to put it into health. Well, okay, Michael. Obesity is on the rise in the Caribbean. Notice what I said. I just dealt with one disease. Obesity is on the rise in the Caribbean. Have we come up with a plan, Michael? We are saying no school sports in some countries, some territories around the OECS and around the Caribbean. That we don't think the children should be going to play any sports because of the pandemic, XYZ. But we don't have any plan in place, Michael, because those children have been sitting down for a year. But we don't have anything in place between here to get them active. So if we don't have no sports for a year and we're going into another year, Michael, what do you think is going to happen with obesity?
So are you saying, Vernon, that sports among regional leaders, regional governments, to you is all about talk and no action, lip service?
Well, you can always say, Michael, that the governments of the OECS or the Caribbean has invested heavily in infrastructure in sports. And I think wherever you go around the Caribbean, almost every sport in every community has, whether a basketball, a netball court, a tennis court, you name that. That's brilliant, Michael. One thing I can say to you, the governments have done an excellent job in that area. But where are the benefits now, the financial benefits now, to be able to make sure now that we use those sports facilities wisely to be able to attract, as we would say, colleges from the United States, from the United Kingdom? How are we intertwining to be able to make sure that the clubs in our OECS region get an opportunity to compete against each other? Because we missed the OECS football competition, which used to take place in the Leeward Islands, and then we used to have an overall OECS champs of champs between the Leewards and the Windwards. We don't have that competition anymore. So what is actually happening is that Michael Bascom plays for Grenada and he's waiting for a World Cup qualifier. In the meantime, had we had the OECS competition taking place, Michael would have already played a couple of games for Grenada against St. Lucia, and he would have played against St. Kitts and Nevis and Antigua and St. Martin, and so he would have had at least 5-8 games under his belt before he even go to the World Cup qualifiers. Now, there are no games. There's no OECS basketball, there's no OECS netball, there's nothing sports-wise. But in the meantime, Michael, outside of last year, the Sir Garfield Sobers schools competition is continuing. And you have huge sums of schools coming from South Africa, United Kingdom, USA, from Bermuda. You have schools coming to Barbados to participate in the Sir Garfield Sobers competition, along with the surrounding colleges from Trinidad and Jamaica. And I think Antigua sent a team. St. Kitts and Nevis Cricket Academy also sent a team at some point in time. So that is being active. Why? Because Barbados understand, Michael, what it means to have those things. We in the other territories, we paying just lip service when it comes in terms of us trying to be able to make sure, and as somebody said, the facilities that we have erected make sure that it gets us votes, but we need more than votes now. We need some return on the investment.
Yeah, but no, it's interesting because Colin mentioned the fact of a squash facility, and I also said, well, there's one in Grenada, but I'm not even certain that many people know that when the track and field stadium was built, that they actually constructed as part of that a squash court, indoor facility. I don't even know to this day what it is being used for, but I do know that at some point in time there was this squash. No squash is played in Grenada. So yes, your point about facilities, we can give them high marks for the investment in facilities. But when it
let me help you here, Michael. Do you know that there's an indoor facility in Montserrat? You knew about that?
Indoor, like an indoor gymnasium, kind of.
We have Montserrat has an indoor basketball facility that can play netball and basketball. Now that's almost like news to you, right?
Yes, certainly.
So here, this is what I'm talking about. Now we have a situation here, Michael, in Antigua and Barbuda, where the athletic club, which is close to the Stanford ground, the swimming area, the gymnasium, the swimming pool, everything, they're going to be closed. They're closed because of the pandemic. Now, you know what is actually happening, Michael? There are 3 swim clubs in Antigua and Barbuda who form part of that athletic club. They are going to be affected. Swimming is a big thing in Antigua and Barbuda. As you know, they've had OECS swimming championship. So even though we're surrounded, Michael, by water, we have not really paid attention to those coaches who have done an excellent job by having our young athletes in the pool doing real excellent. And so that's another scenario. In fact, you know what's amazing, Michael, because you were talking about squash and you were talking about some other sports and non-traditional sports and Olympic sports. There's still a myth that, we only going to play cricket, football, basketball. We're not pushing ourselves into the other non-traditional sports. But maybe, Michael, the non-traditional sports is maybe what might get us on the medal podium. Because the huge sums of money, Michael, that is being spent to tell us that one of our OECS teams is going to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. By the time that comes around, Michael, right, we're going to be bankrupt. So maybe all that money that we're beginning to invest in by saying St. Vincent and Antigua and St. Kitts and Nevis, we want to get to the World Cup, we really need to come up with some realistic goals to understand that the men's FIFA World Cup for any small nation, it is going to be huge. We're speaking to the president of the Jamaica Football Federation, Michael Ricketts. He said they have 9 disciplines who are competing on the world stage. And this is on the campaign for the different respectives for ladies and for men's, under 17, under 20, you name it, qualifiers. 6 million US and counting, Michael, in terms of preparation. Now, Michael, we're Grenada going to get 6 million, Antigua, or St. Kitts and Nevis. We're going to get 6 million US for it. This is only just one sport, you know. We ain't talking about other sports. We're just talking about one sport, football. You understand where I'm coming from? So I'm saying, Michael, we have to now chart our energies in the other areas, the other non-traditional sports. The other final issue, Michael, that the point that I want to make. Have we really utilized the coaches and the human resources out of Cuba? Have we done that? Let's look at Trinidad and Tobago, Michael, who have executed and have done that smartly. Olympic champion, Tia Walcott, Cuban coach. That's just one example. I just give you one example. I know, Michael, that a couple other countries have Cuban coaches, XYZ, but what I'm saying, Michael, have we as an OECS come together and sat down with our counterparts in Cuba and say, hey, you see what's happening in Grenada? They got a couple Cuban coaches and they're working on field events. So let's get some coaches to look around and figure out that, boy, we got some good high jumpers in Antigua and Barbuda, some good sprinters in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have some good field athletes in Grenada. Let's look around. What Montserrat have? Montserrat maybe might look like they might be able to have some good chores, so we can balance and get some of the coaches around so that we could be able to get onto the podium. Maybe we might even decide that we could get some swim coaches from Cuba to maybe get involved in gymnastics. I think we need to start thinking outside of the box, Michael, if we want to be able to get on the Olympic medal podium.
Yeah, well, the thinking outside of the box is something that we have been clamoring for quite a while in terms of our sports administrators in particular. And I know it's something you also want to touch on regarding our sports administrators in the region. It hasn't been good news for those in Grenada regarding boxing, as you have heard in my program last week, that boxing is in disarray in Grenada, all because of the whole issue regarding the executive and the association, etc., etc. So much to talk about regarding that. But regional sports administration in particular, and their thinking, their thought process, and especially in the context of the pandemic and post-pandemic, whether or not, some of these associations maybe will be able to survive, because as you indicated that whereas some of them used to depend on government subsidies and assistance from government, no doubt when it comes to the budget, one of the first things that government will be cutting most likely will be sports. Health and education and all these will be getting a sizable amount. There is no if and but about it. So here comes the important part of our regional sports administrators or sports administrators, and how can they think outside of the box? Because their international affiliates, for example, may be saying the same thing, that we also have been affected, and the sort of assistance you have been receiving may not be available. So in order for these associations to survive, they need to be thinking outside of the box. Vernon, how do you suggest they go forward?
First of all, I want to start with administrators, because Michael, Colin, myself, Ricky Skerritt, Dr. Shallow, all administrators. The administrators get no praise. The sportsmen, they bash the administrators, you name it. The cricketers, the basketballers. But something has to be happening for sports to be still viable in the Caribbean. And so whether we think that the administrators are doing a good job or they're not doing a good job, something is still happening, because at least folks can still go to the Olympics, folks can still play cricket, folks can still play basketball, they can still play badminton. They have some activities happening. What I feel is happening is that our administrators are still living 40, 50 years behind the time. Sports is $1 billion industry. And I said to you, Michael, in 2012, when Kim Collins from St. Kitts and Nevis was barred, let me make the point, was barred from participating in the Olympics. I make no bones about that. 2012, 2016, when he was barred from participating in the Olympics. Our administrators of the day still don't even understand and can't tell anybody why Kim Collins did not run in the Olympics. Nobody could tell you that up until now, Michael. And you know that this is something that has been dear to my heart, and I will, whenever God is ready for me, I will forever defend that situation. You know what's happening, Michael? Our administrators can't deal with elite athletes. They cannot, and they have not prepared themselves to say, boy, let's go and try and see if we could be able to find somebody to deal with an elite athlete. So when we have an elite athlete like Karani James, who has an agent, who has a manager, who has a physio, who has a doctor, who has an itinerary for 2021 mapped out already, the Grenada Athletic Association can just get up and pick up the phone and call Karani and say, hey, you have to come home to come run for us. No, it doesn't work like that. There's a communication line. So you know what's happening? Karani James is going to say to you, Colin James is my manager. This is his number. And you find him very rude. Yeah, that's how the administrators think. Who Colin? I'm not talking to the Colin James, I'm talking to you. No, boss man. My job is to go and train. My coach and my physio is at the Karani James Stadium waiting on me. I have to go and train. No disrespect to you. Call Colin James. This is his number. And people have a problem with it. So, because sports is $1 billion industry, the administrators have not been able to come up to speed to understand how are we going to deal with elite athletes. We have heard about situations in Antigua with Daniel Baker-Bailey and the association and the National Olympic Committee and all these guys and everybody. And if you listen to some of those guys, because I've been around, Michael, been around some of the guys from the National Olympic Committee. And Michael, that is their honeymoon. That is their retirement fund. They don't care about no athletes. You can imagine, Michael, that folks, the chef de mission know which Olympics they're going to, which Commonwealth Games they're going to, which World Championships they're going to, but they have no athletes, and that is okay. That's how our sports administrators think. They know which games they're going to before the athletes. In fact, they don't even want to carry a media person. They take somebody from the executive and make them a media person. Michael, I went to the Pan Am Games, you know that, in Brazil, with a view, lining up to be able to make sure that I was going to go to the Beijing Olympics, because you know that was the platform. And I came back home, Michael, from Brazil, and kept asking, what are going to be the arrangements to go to Beijing? What is it going to cost? Tell me, I'll go and raise my own funds to be able to get to go there. Until this day, Michael, I was never told. But instead, an executive member from the National Olympic Committee was the media representative.
Yeah, it's something I always, I've noticed that whether it was Olympic Games, Pan Am Games, even World Championships, but particularly those under the auspices of the NOCs, National Olympic Committees, where you have members of the executive, performing the role. There was once I was in the mix zone and I saw someone from another island who's an executive member actually in the mix zone. Ethically, that's not correct. And it's something I raised at the International Sports Press Association. They had a meeting, and it's something I raised because if you cannot find someone in the media, or at least accredit someone in the media to to go to these international meets. There's no reason why you should take someone from your executive and just accredit them just for the sake of accreditation, and and ask me what the person, they're not asking anything, they're not reporting anything, not even a photo, and then the whole problem about even the athletes or the sports people who they should be representing don't even know who the person is, or they don't even see them, and things like that, but that's a lot that can be discussed in the future. But the point,
and that's why I wanted to salute Colin James for his contribution in even trying to see if he could be able to keep sports alive by writing, because it's things like these that turn off young journalists. Now, why am I fighting myself if I can't go to an Olympic Games? I can go to the Carifta Games, any little small meet, and so that's not a problem. They're not interested in that. In fact, I've been to almost 10 Cariftas, Michael, right? But you will never see those officials who claiming at the Olympics to be media workmen go to a Carifta Games. So they have never seen Karani James or Usain Bolt at a Carifta Games, but they go to the Olympics where they can be able to cock, and they stay in the hotel and they get the finest treatment. And that's why I said to you, I make no bones about it. It's a retirement fund for all of the officials. That's what they use it for, because they have no respect for the media. Worse so, if you just write something about them, you're branded. As far as they're concerned, that's it. They just disband you because they've got the power. So where you think we having all these problems in our communities? We having all these problems in our communities is because no young sports leaders are allowed to blossom and come through. So when you look at the National Olympic Committee's executives, you see the same people for the last 40, 50 years, and nothing has changed in the movement. Nothing.
But on the flip side, while that may be so, who do you blame? Because do folks want to get involved? I mean, some people might say they are not given the opportunity to be involved. But I know of situations where people are not interesting. They do not show any interest. So what happens? I mean,
because there's no policy, Michael, and there must be policy. Hear me, Michael. I think sometimes the Ministry of Sports and the National Olympic Committee maybe have to hold some blame for some things which happen in some of these Caribbean countries. How you can have associations who have not had elections for 10 years, 10, 11 years? How is that possible, Michael? That in Guyana, let's talk cricket, because you stir me up, so let's talk. How we could not have elections in Guyana for cricket? How we could not have elections for boxing in Antigua? How we could have problems with boxing in Grenada? You have a number of associations around who are law to themselves, don't have no elections, and nobody look like they want to go and say, hey, pardon, you need to have elections, because if you don't have elections, we'll call you out. So the sport is suffering because Olympic committees and Ministry of Sports can't intervene. So they sit back and say, well, boy, IOC tell us there's no government interference. Well, Michael, I don't know no association that owns that owns a sporting facility. And if they do, they still need government support. So at some point in time, somebody need to nudge you to tell you, hey, you have not held elections for 10 years. So you really can't be coming in here and demanding duty-free for equipment, but you don't have no governance structure. Those things is what I feel need to start happening. On the other hand, Michael, we need to come up with a new cadre of new sports leaders. But we can't come up with a new cadre of new sports leaders, Michael, because people are calling elections and don't even tell you that they're calling elections. Don't even have members. There are people around, Michael, who just call elections, cricket elections. Just call up an election, have the executive come to the meeting, don't have a meeting no time during their tenure, if they're in for 2 years. If they had a general meeting 2 or 3 times, Michael, they had a lot. So people have turned off. The clubs, they use the clubs as a guinea pig, Michael, to get elected. And once they get elected, they don't go back to develop the clubs. And that is happening right now, Michael, in the football in the OECS region. FIFA has introduced a FIFA club licensing agreement. Half of the clubs, Michael, more than half of the clubs in the OECS don't understand a thing what's going on because they're not structured, because the associations didn't take time out to develop them and tell them, hey, this is what coming, this is what you have to deal with. They only have them there when elections come to come and say. So if we got 50 clubs in St. Kitts, hey, remember elections coming up in 2023, right? So we can come, we can bring some balls for you, we can bring some bibs, and you gotta come and vote for me. That's the only time they remember the clubs. And I'm just talking just football.
Too many, are you suggesting too many misfits, as we'll say, in sports administration in the region?
Well, you only have to just look, Michael, on the executives of most of the associations. How many ladies you see popping up? You know there's supposed to be a gender balance, equality across most of the sporting associations. Michael, call them out. I think when we get some time, let's call out most of the associations, the main associations, and you're going to see what's happening. Are they really saying what they're supposed to do? Are they making an effort to get women involved in sports? Or that is just another pastime? And so when the governing body come down and say, how many women you have on your executive? You say, well, we got Miss Bascom. How long she's been on? Oh, she came on the last time. So you plan to get any more? Or the women not interested? Those are the stories that you're hearing. But they don't really want no women. They want the women to just go to do the work while they go on the trips. That's what our sports administrators are dealing with right now. They don't really want no serious woman to come in and no sport executive to be able to drive them and give them the ideas. No, they don't really want that, Michael. They're talking, but there's no action to it.
So,
but I want to come back, Michael. Before you go, we're on sports administration. While we're on sports administration, Michael, I think there were two institutions, Michael, in the Caribbean which came under attack in the last 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The University of the West Indies and Cricket West Indies. Let me repeat, Michael. I will extend it to 2 months. We're in April, March, April. There were two institutions that have made all of us proud around the world. The University of the West Indies and Cricket West Indies, as it is known today. Originally, it was West Indies Cricket, and the names changed. Everybody moved. I hope that we could be able to get the tree out of the logo, but we'll talk that on another day, right? But those two institutions, Michael, were attacked from all angles for the last 2 months. You hear people questioning the ability of Sir Hilary Beckles and whether he should continue. We had a situation, Michael, where for the first time in West Indies history, we're going to be celebrating 100 years coming up, Michael. I think it's in 2027. Yeah, 2027, 1927, I think 1928. I think that's when we first graced our presence. So we're going to be celebrating 100 years, Michael, West Indies cricket. And for the first time ever, Michael, a sitting president, Ricky Skerritt, the 19th of Cricket West Indies. We had 18 before him. We couldn't have a quorum to have an annual general meeting. I saw that, Michael. I almost lost my job, Michael, because the whole walls came crashing down. Suppose all those persons, Michael, who signed contract with Cricket West Indies over the last couple of months decided that this got to be a joke institution, man. You know what I mean? The damage. You know the damage that has been placed on West Indies cricket and the University of the West Indies over the last 2 months, Michael? You understand the attack and where it came from? These two institutions that have made us proud. And let me say this, Michael. There are no guaranteed and no perfect institutions in the world. So as much as we want to bash the University of the West Indies, the people who are trying to bash the University of the West Indies, ask them what they're doing to be able to help the system. The people who are trying to bash West Indies cricket, the same cricket which made them millionaires, and give them benefits. Ask them what they're giving back to the game in their respective territories. Ask them how they're helping someone in Grenada or someone in Vernon in Nevis or somebody in Guyana to be able to realize a dream for them that they too can get something out of cricket. Ask them, Michael, how they're promoting women's cricket. Ask them how they're promoting sports. Ask them, Michael, when is the last time that they helped somebody in the community? But they want to come and bash the institutions and still be part of the institutions, you know, Michael. Now, Michael, you know sometimes, right? We talk about people being socialists, all sorts of names, right? But sometimes and being a communist and so. But I think in some sports, Michael, we need some communist leaders. You see, when people decide, Michael, that you're not turning up to a meeting, then sanctions has to be taken out. So you ain't turn up to a meeting, we find who the members are. Who ain't turn up? Michael Bascom and Vernon Springer, where we gonna ban you? You can no longer serve. Because you really can't have West Indies cricket at heart. And that is how I feel, Michael, about this whole situation. How will you expect, Michael? Michael, let's be frank. These leaders want to run sports in the Caribbean, but they don't want to turn up for a meeting. So how is the sport going to run when you can't even respect the sport? You have to respect the sport and you have to respect the institutions. I had to get that off of my chest, Michael.
Well, it seems as if you have quite a lot on your chest, you know. But the question still remains about the misfits, okay, in regional sports administrators. And I think it was Kathy who was saying that, you know, you mean they won't intervene. But the point being made, Vernon, seriously though, that why it is that some people are not attracted to sports administration. Is it because of what's happening now, what is happening before their eyes, that they're not interested? Or is it a matter of that they're just not being, welcome into the fold? I mean, what are the real issues that affecting the attraction of young people into sports administration?
The sports administrators, the modern day sports administrators, are not willing to learn the business of sports. You have to learn the business of sports. We're going to be in a situation, Michael, where I'm scared about our small associations in the territories. And if we don't get the OECS Sports Desk up and running, a number of small sports in the OECS are going to die. And as such, our communities are going to be more affected based on what is happening. Let me repeat again, Michael. I am fearful for some of these sports administrators. Why? Because we have used the government treasury as an ATM. So we in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we want to send away a basketball team. We know about this 2 years ago, and we wait until the team going 2 weeks to come out and get parents to get riled up and call in on all the sports shows them and say that the government ain't give us no support, and so we can't go to the tournament, and the young people then gonna be affected, and and the government buckle to the pressure, find the money that they didn't have to send the team. And this is what our sports administrators do around the Caribbean all the time. They don't understand, and they come with this nonsense, Michael, giving you the impression as if like you don't know about sports. Michael, there's almost a calendar which is being planned out where you know, Michael, that in 2023, the ICC is going to have an Under-19 Girls World Cup. So everybody in the Caribbean knows that there's going to be an Under-19 ICC Under-20. In 2023, there's going to be a Girls Under-19 World Cup. You know, Michael, that Carifta Games is supposed to take place in Bermuda this year. It could be postponed because of the pandemic. But you know, in the next couple of years, once they map out everything, Michael, where the Carifta Games going. You know, Michael, where the FIFA Youth World Cup under 20 is going to be held. All these things are planned. But these smart administrators wait until the last minute to come around and put pressure or try to put pressure on the communities or on the young people, parents, to be able to come up with money so they could go for a joyride. Because most of the time it's a joyride they're going for. I am saying, Michael, no serious person who understands about life is going to come around and be part of these associations who are not serious about sports. They're only talking about it. So there are people who want to help, Michael, but there are also people who are in high authorities who are afraid to act. Notice what I said, Michael. Who are afraid to act. And until when we get the technocrats to advise our sports ministers that, hey, Vernon Springer is the president of squash in Antigua and Barbuda, but he has not held elections for the last 10 years. And for the minister to write you a powerful letter and let you know that, hey, you need to hold elections by 2021. And if you don't, sanctions will be placed against you. That's what we have to start to do. Otherwise, Michael, we're going to have the same, we're going to be having this debate for the next 5 years, because the same sports leaders that we have around now, they're going to continue to run sports because the young people ain't going to have the faith and the patience and the energy to come in to deal with the hypocrisy and the nonsense that these sports leaders are going through today.
What do you say then about the lack of proper sports policies for these regional countries? Because of the lack of a sports policy, we have this this reoccurring in most of the islands of the Caribbean.
Well, let's put this on the radar. You know, we spoke about this already, Michael. That is why I'm saying the OECS as one unit, we need to have an OECS sports policy. Not Antigua have a sports policy and St. Kitts got a sports policy and Grenada got their own sports policy. There's some movement where we have sportsmen and artists and can move to the Caribbean and can apply their trade and XYZ there. I am saying put the technocrats together at one table. Just like how we have an OECS union, I think we can have an OECS sports policy that I feel that can be able to be of greater benefits to us as a body rather than us individually trying to see if we could fight on our own to be able to come up with it together. And then we can have a model which other countries can be able to look forward and say, hey, boy, what those guys doing in the OECS is not a bad thing, you know, because they have free movement moving between the OECS and they got one policy which governs for all. Now, just like anything else, Michael, there are some countries which are bigger than some, but almost all the countries in the OECS almost participate in sports, in almost every aspect of sports. So it's not that anybody going to be left out. So I'm saying, Michael, I want to salute Joseph Redspereira and his entire staff who would have initiated the initial OECS Sports Desk. And to say to the technocrats today that we have to find an avenue, people like Victor Vida Bruna and all those ladies and so, we have to find an avenue. Where do we go to have that discussion? I think Vida tell me that we maybe need to speak to the Caribbean National Olympic Committees. Boy, to tell you the truth, boy, Michael, I have some respect for some of the leaders who are on that. Brian Lewis is the president, I have some respect. But in terms of some of the other folks who serve in the aspect, I think we could find some other people in the diaspora and maybe even in the Caribbean who I think understand about sports and will bring a business aspect. Because the new OECS Sports Desk is going to need a business aspect. Because we can't go to the ATM. The ATM is the government. We're going to have to come up, we have to devise a plan that will be able to make sure that the body can sustain itself. Especially during a time of pandemic, especially during what's happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, especially during hurricane season, especially during climate change. We have to be able, I think, Michael, and we've been around as journalists, there are enough funding agencies, Michael, outside of the Caribbean, from Australia down, from the United Kingdom down to Japan, who are willing to come on board, providing that we organize ourselves, Michael, and fund sports in the OECS. I deal with them. We talk to them all the time as journalists. But the problem is that there's no leadership in that area. So maybe, Michael, we might have to take off our journalist hat and put on our sports administrator's hat and start the process. Because if we continue to talk about it, Michael, in 5 years' time, I'm going to be 60-something and maybe knocked up in somewhere in a home and feeling hurt that I really didn't do anything. So while I have a little energy, let's try and see if we could take off our journalist hat for the meantime, garner some people around in the Caribbean who have a deep love for sports, especially in the OECS, and let's try and see if we could be able to put together a paper and take it to the OECS sports leaders and say, hey, this is what worked 25 years ago. This is what the OECS Sports Desk did for us 25 years ago. This is what this can do for us now in the next 25 years going forward.
Are you concerned that if there isn't a plan of action and an urgent plan of action, that sports in the OECS will be null and void?
That's where we're heading. You already see the challenges of even netball surviving in the OECS, simply because the young ladies don't have anywhere where they can be able to go to establish and showcase their skills. Why are we not having, Michael, more sporting activities between the Ministry of Sports Department across the OECS? Dominica just completed the under-16 netball championship, which used to be one. We used to have a under-16 netball championship where the Ministry of Sports used to have Antigua, Anguilla, Montserrat. Why we can't have that, Michael? What is stopping us? What is stopping us from having a Dominica team go to Grenada? I know somebody gonna tell me something about costs and all kind of stuff and so. Michael, there was a time when we used to run sports and there was no money. And it used to happen. Why? Because the Pat Whites and the Lloyd Lazars and the Marvin Richards and the folks in the sports directors in Dominica and Grenada and so, those guys were adamant that when they were speaking to their Minister of Sports, they said, Mr. Minister, we have 4 teams at touring next year. A team from Grenada going to the Dominica Games, one going to the St. Kitts Nevis 13 and under cricket competition, one going to the Caribbean under-16 netball championship, and we need some money for the junior athletes who are going to Carifta. And so that has to be in the budget. That's what those OECS, that's what those former directors used to, that's what they used to put in place. Now, the directors, they're not interested. The technocrats, not interested. They're not pushing anything. And like I said to you, if it is not their sport, then it is nothing. So we need to find some people to say, hey, every year, the OECS is going to send a combined team to England, cricket. Every year, we're going to organize at the end of our competition and we're going to send a netball team to the Cayman Islands. Every year, when we finish our OECS sports competition, we're going to pick a team and we're going to go to the Sogafe Sobers competition, or we're going to send 2 teams. Those are things that can happen. There are people out there, Michael, who want to sponsor junior sports. Don't tell them anything about nobody who 21 and 22 and no hardcore men and women. Tell them about junior sports. You tell them about junior sports, Michael, they're going to come on board and they're going to sponsor. So I'm saying, Michael, even if it meant that we had to go to LEAC with a plan and say, hey, we're trying to revive OECS school sports and we want a 50% rebate on tickets. And then when we get to Antigua or Grenada or whatever, the government there is going to take care of accommodation. But we have a memorandum of understanding which is being established. I'm saying to you, Michael, parents will and families will make a sacrifice to get involved to make sure that their child is on that plane going to represent their school or their country.
Vernon, but you know, that's a lot of talk, but the real thing is the action, you know. And there's also the issue I know you mentioned about government a couple of times, but there is also and government's intervention to some extent. But there's also the argument about governments limitation in terms of intervening in, sporting disciplines as it relates to international federations, etc., etc. The whole works regarding that. So, sometimes there's some level of limitation as to how much government can do
But hold on,
regarding
Michael.
regarding that.
But hold on, Michael. The governments have a responsibility to plan a pathway.
Yeah, yes, they do. They do. We establish that.
So the pathway is through the Ministry of Sports and the Ministry of Education. That's the pathway. We can't fix the other problem yet, Michael. The other problem that you're talking about is an ego problem, where we have some administrators, the ego bigger than them. And rather than they understand that nobody voted for them, somebody vote for Kim Collins, somebody want to see Kim Collins. Nobody want to see Michael Bascom, who's the president of the Grenada Athletic Association, because Michael Bascom can't run. People just want to see Karani James represent Grenada at the Olympics. Karani James going to the Olympics this year? That's what people want to know. Nobody care if Michael Bascom go to the Olympics. Because if Karani James not going to the Olympics, the people in Grenada are not really interested in the Olympics. The quicker the administrators understand that, Michael, I think the better it would be for them.
Fair enough. Fair enough, Vernon. And you're saying all of that to say the importance of our OECS Sports Desk, okay? And how
we need to lead.
Yeah, how imperative it is for the islands within the OECS to ensure that the OECS Sports Desk is operating. But Vernon, the problem we do have is that of, and I mean, that is what you have been outlining, and it probably means that we may have to look outside, because the same sports administrators that probably you're bashing are the same sports administrators that might be probably involved with that same OECS Sports Desk.
No, we have to change that. We got to change the landscape. Are you ready?
Really?
Michael, I can find 12 sports leaders in the OECS right now, I can find 12 new sports leaders in the OECS right now.
So right. You use the word new. You use the word. Yeah.
Who willing to work? Who willing to work? I mean, I'm not asking you, Michael. I deal with them. I deal with them on a daily basis. They're hurting like me and you, Michael. I am ready, Michael, to put up my hand and ready to work for the OECS, because I am saying, Michael, I have been a product of the OECS through Joseph Reds Pereira. Let me repeat that again. I am a product of the OECS Sports Desk through Joseph Reds Pereira. I went to the British Virgin Islands, Michael, as a cricket coach and lived there for 8 months. Who organized that? Joseph Reds Pereira. As a cricket coach, when I just come back from England. I then left from there, from the British Virgin Islands, and went back to England, got myself certified, come back, and Joseph Reds Pereira lined me up again, and I went to Anguilla to work. I lived in Anguilla for about a year and something, working as a cricket coach. Now I'm saying to you, Michael, I have benefited, I am a servant, I have benefited through the OECS Sports Desk. So I know, Michael, what it means, what sports means to me. I don't know the last time, Michael, that I bought a ticket. Let me repeat. I do not know the last time personally that I have bought a ticket, because I have either gone on duty through Cricket West Indies, or I have gone on duty as a sports journalist or a sports administrator. So I don't know. I, Vernon A. Springer, don't know the last time that I have bought a ticket. So that's why it irks me when I sit down with some administrators and they watch me and tell me, I can't hire Michael Bascom. And I saying, well, you can't hire Michael Bascom. Is it that you're jealous of him because he's upgraded himself, certified himself, he's one of the top coaches here? Well, how we going to hire Michael Bascom and we have some coaches here who we've been toiling with for all the time? Well, I'm saying, but the coaches ain't good. So what you want to continue to do? You still want to continue with the same coaches who ain't good? Or you want to hire somebody who can bring some value to your program? So the boys club continue.
when you say the coaches ain't good, is that a local term you use?
We talking about local to the region. Ain't just think it's to the region. It's to the region. The coaches who we have in the Caribbean, whether we like it or not, in some of the disciplines, Michael, they can't take the athletes to the next level. And they're trying to hold on to the athletes. So you bring Colin James to this level, which is to the Carifta level. But you can't get Colin James to win an Olympic medal. So Colin James has to go to Jamaica where Dr. Glenn Mills is going to be able to take him to the next level. So why don't you just give up Colin James and allow him to go? No, you still want to hold on to Colin James. And that is the problem, Michael, that our coaches have in the Caribbean. They stagnated the sports. They're holding on to the athletes like the athletes belong to them. And they're telling people about, is my athlete? How becomes your athlete? You brought the athlete to one level, but you haven't developed yourself mentally to be able to understand that you don't have the know-how to take the athlete to the next level. That is what is holding us back, man. That is what is holding us back. Michael, we have another situation here, Michael, where in the Caribbean, our cricketers want to hold the board, the Cricket West Indies, at ransom over a fitness test policy. When the rest of the world, Michael, is up in the ante for fitness tests, we in the Caribbean bring in a union to say, hey, we don't like the regiment so what you put out there for this fitness test, you know, and we don't. What are you really telling me? In this International Day of Sport, Michael, that we're fighting against something which is going to make you better? That's what we come to now. That we come so unionized that we want to bring our union to meet with Cricket West Indies and we're questioning about the fitness test and why and who pass and who ain't pass. We get so, Michael, and plus we ain't even performing. We're not even winning. We wasn't even winning before. We were not performing. But here were some athletes, some cricketers who want to hold a board ransom and questioning about the fitness test policy and who should do it and who should not do it in an international world. Now, Michael, you know, right? You realize that the pool is dwindling going to the IPL, right? You know, if some of these Caribbean cricketers don't get the act together. You know, O'Shane Thomas, Michael, in 2020, almost lost his IPL contract just from the CPL alone. You realize he didn't play one game, Michael? You know why? Fitness. This is serious time. The Indians are serious. The Indians have upped the fitness test for the senior team. The Pakistanis, they've gone to a different level. Everybody, Michael, is improving, but West Indies want to stay the same place. So you know what happening? Skeleton Shallow gonna come under some heat. Oh, they're forcing this fitness test issue here. But it is best for West Indies cricket. Because what we've been doing before for West Indies cricket, Michael, is building from on top down. So we missed the trick. We have to build from the base up. What is happening to our grassroots program? We have to concentrate on that. We don't have enough time today, Michael, so I'll have to come back and we're going to be able to deal with that. But let me tell you something, Michael. We can't fix West Indies cricket from top down. We have to fix it from base up.
Well, quite a lot you're saying there, Vernon, and I realize 1 hour is really not enough for Vernon to be on our program because with just 2 minutes remaining, I you know, there's so much more that we wanted to speak about. But on a final note, Vernon, and I know you want to drive home the point regarding our sports administrators, our OECS Sports Desk, and how do we go forward with the post-pandemic period? And if you can probably say that in, you know, a minute and a half, I'll appreciate.
Michael, you have to lead the way, and I'm going to help you along with Colin and the journalists in the Caribbean. We have to organize a webinar with the directors of sports and the Ministry of Sports and top officials in the OECS. We have to organize a webinar. We might not get everybody to talk, but we need to be able to make sure that we bring in some expertise and put the cards on the table so that people understand the importance of sports and where we're going. We might maybe even need to get the governor of Central Bank to be part of that discussion going forward in terms of how best can sports help us to survive and come out of this pandemic. It's only sports, Michael, could be able to bring us through this pandemic. We have to lead on this.
Mm-hmm. I will take you up on that. I know something you spoke about before regarding having some discussion on the way forward, and I think it's very important, and it's something probably I will look forward to collaborating with, as you say.
I see you have live in St. Kitts and Nevis. Don't get it mixed up. Antigua and Barbuda. Don't. That's home now.
Oh, so you actually so you home now. Oh, well, you call it Antigua home, right?
That's what I said to you.
Okay, right. Well, good to know. But
home.
Okay then. But it's nice speaking to you, Vernon. It's always a pleasure having you. And someone said, tend to be very passionate indeed, on the issues. And I'm looking to speak to you sometime in the future. Once we have life.
But what I think we need to happen, Michael, and maybe we need to give ourselves a 6 weeks window. We need to give ourselves a 6 weeks window and organize a webinar. It's the way to go. Just like how you're here talking to me, we really need to take the lead on it. And I think that I will help you. I'm sure Colin would want to get on board between me and behind the scenes and put it together. I think we like I tell you, we got people out there who want to help. Let's get them on board and let's make this happen.
Okay then. Well, as I said, I'm serious about it, and I'll take you up on that offer. Thank you very much, Vernon.
God bless you, man.
Okay.
And it was indeed a pleasure speaking to everybody who's on your platform. And let me once again salute Colin James, who continues to try, because it's not an easy feat to be able to day in, day out, to be able to come up and to be able to highlight all these things. But hey, we got to change the culture, and maybe we need to stop talking and just act.
Okay then. Thank you very much. Okay then. Folks, there you have it. That's Vernon Springer. He is the CEO and owner of VASports Media. Even though he's from St. Kitts, he is speaking to us from Antigua, which is now his base, his home base, as he says. Thank you very much, Vernon. Always very passionate about sports. And before that, you had Colin James, who is the editor of SportsWorld Antigua. And no doubt, I want to thank both gentlemen, sports journalists themselves. And and I want to thank Kathy Harper-Hall for keeping us company during this program. Very much your insights, very informative indeed. And I know you're passionate about sports, not just netball, not just boxing, and not just track and field, but sports in general. And thank you for all your years of service. And not just to sports to Barbados and Jamaica, but sports throughout the Caribbean. Folks, I want to thank you once again for being part of our program this weekend. And no doubt looking forward to your company again on Thursday, when we do have another in our program called Saturday Sports Special. On behalf of all those who have made this possible and all our guests for this week, I want to thank you, and do look forward to your company on Thursday. Do have a pleasant weekend.